Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
On the outside, the five of you are villains, predators, remorseless sociopaths.
Oh, stop. You're making me blush.
We're the bad guys. And this is the crew. Mr. Snake, Serpentine, safe-cracking machine, imagine Houdini, but with no arms.
Jackpot.
Yes! Miss Tarantula, our in-house tech wizard.
Where'd you learn to do that?
Mostly YouTube.
Mr. Piranha, he's brave, crazy. What's up, Papa? And Mr. Shark, master of disguise. His greatest trick, stealing the Mona Lisa disguised as the Mona Lisa. And rounding out the crew is me, the big bad wolf. We may be bad, but we're so good at it.
Arrest them!
We're out of here.
So long, suckers.
Going nowhere. Well, this just got a little weird.
No! Wolf!
If only we were given a chance to be anything more than criminals.
If you want to stay out of jail, you need to go good.
What are you doing?
We're gonna pretend to go good. The bad guys become the good guys so we can stay the bad guys. You know what I'm saying?
It's fantastic. Wolf, you're a genius.
Welcome to the first day of the rest of your best life.
Look, it's a cat stuck in a tree.
What does your heart tell you to do? A good person would
Smack it.
Skin it. Stab it.
Saute it.
It's so obvious. I want you to save it.
Oh, right.
Here,
The good guy.
We're more than just scary villains. They love us.
You're such a good boy.
Maybe I don't want to be a...
What? A bad guy? No. We'll always be bad guys.
Let's try something simpler. I'm going to give you a push pop.
Just for me.
No, to share.
This is gonna taste extra sweet.
Nope. Sucker. That's it. I'll teach you to share. Totally worth it.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host Matthew Pejkovic and this is episode number 424. Releasing March 31 in Australian cinemas is The Bad Guys, a new animated feature film from Dreamworks based on the popular best-selling books written by Aaron Blabey. Featuring the voice work of Sam Rockwell, Mark Maron, Aquafina and more, The Bad Guys is an energetic and handsomely drawn heist film for kids that also delivers a poignant message about redemption. This episode will feature two different interviews, the first with The Bad Guys author and executive producer Aaron Blabey, and then my interview with the director of The Bad Guys, Pierre Perifel. Enjoy. Aaron, how are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. I thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure.
So I got to say, I don't know who else can brag about this or who you've talked to so far, but I've read all of your Bad Guys books because my son, my older son especially, my 9-year-old Michael, is a huge fan of it. And he's so looking forward to watching this movie next week as well.
Oh,
so it's only
very cool.
So it's only fair that the first question will be the one that he always wanted to ask you. So I'm going to do it on his behalf. How did you come up with the idea for the Bad Guys books?
Well, there's a few things. It all happened kind of at once. So I got 2 kids, 2 boys. And when my youngest was about 5, came home with a series of books from school, like each like a different one every day, and each one of them was more boring than the last, and he hated reading, and he's making him read this stuff. And I was sitting there with him and he wasn't wrong. These books were just so boring, and I thought I want to do something that would make him want to read. What could it be? And at the time he really liked scary animals, and my favorite animals were always scary. He liked cool cars. I grew up loving Mad Max. And I thought, well, how could what did I love when I was a kid? And then, in fact, what do I love now? And I was thinking about all the movies that I love. And I thought, is there any way I could mash all that up somehow and turn it into something that would actually make a kid want to actually pick up a book instead of going to an Xbox or whatever? And then I thought, well, what could do that? And then I thought, well, when I was a kid, and he's no different, it was always stuff that I couldn't get my hands on. Like I mentioned Mad Max. I would always wanted to go, oh no, it's too violent and whatever. But I thought, what if I took the idea or the iconography of that stuff, and I thought, what if I took it and hotwired it in a way that kids could get their hands on it? And it didn't cross the line, but it had stuff that they'd go, oh my God, I can't believe I get to read this. And that was the thinking behind it. And then all of a sudden, just by thinking that, Mr. Wolf, Mr. Snake, Mr. Shark, Mr. Piranha, they just popped out in like a day. They were just there, and they were fully formed. They're totally the characters as they are now. I just knew them. I've known them my whole life. It's really weird. They were just there. I don't know where they're from really, but by having that idea, it triggered it, and then bleh, there they were. And they changed my life because I've been looking for them my whole life. I really had. Making the Bad Guys books is my favorite thing ever. It just is. I love that I get to make that universe.
Well, on behalf of my 9-year-old who has autism as well, and he's found a love for books through your books. So I just want to say thank you very much for that. Mm-hmm. Just moving on now to my kind of end of the woods. Adapting this film to like another medium is always tricky, but your films are really cool because there's visuals to it, of course, from your illustrations, but it's also a really dialogue heavy kind of film as well. Yeah. Like books, I'm sorry. The transition to like a different medium, especially a film, does having that visual in those dialogues, does it make it easier? Is it just as hard as any other film that you might have like experience with? How does it all kind of work out for you?
Look, I think the fact that the book is a bit like a storyboard, it certainly didn't inform how the movie was plotted or anything, but I think it gave a pretty clear template of what it could be. And then because I was very protective of the characters and how they were to be represented as they are in the books, beyond that, I didn't really mind where they took the story as long as it was in keeping with the spirit of the books. And when they started to experiment with what that could be, it felt very natural the way that it occurred. And you're right, that stuff can not work, and you see it not work all the time, and people have their books adapted and it can be a disaster. So it actually comes down to just the people working on it and having the right team. And we just were so fortunate that we, hooked up with the team at Dreamworks because they understood it from day one, and really, really it meant, and to this day, it means a lot to the team at Dreamworks that they get this right, and that especially for kids who love the books, they want them to go and see the movie, and it'll be different from the books, but they want them to recognize the world they love and have an even bigger experience, as opposed to going, yeah, that's got nothing to do with what I like about the books. I feel like those two things have been achieved. I feel like when I watch the movie, I see my characters absolutely, and at the same time, it's now this glorious big Hollywood thing. So it's kind of best of both worlds, I think.
You got a great voice cast in this movie.
Yeah.
I know you're a big movie fan. When you write your characters, when you write their dialogue, do you have voices of actors in your head that you associate with the characters?
Not. It wasn't really actors, and I tried to keep a really open mind with the voices too, because you can be surprised. You can really like an actor, and then when you actually isolate the voice, it can not be right. But with this, there were certain voices that I was somewhat obsessed with for certain characters, and they, in two cases, wonderfully happened to be the people who are playing the roles. But look, that's a real team effort, and the Dreamworks obviously have an amazing casting department too. In terms of when I'm writing the books, it's sort of, I don't know, it's really hard to describe what happens in my head when I'm writing the books. It begins as a kind of I figure out what the plot basically is going to be of each episode, and then I write it like a screenplay, and then I start to figure out, well, how am I going to tell this with pictures? So it's like a miniature version of making my own movie. And I do hear them in my head, but they don't, it's not quite the same as hearing a specific actor's voice, but now it probably will be. I think I'm just about to sit down and write the next two, and I think it is going to be really difficult to not hear Sam and Mark and Awkwafina. But you know, why would I not want to hear them as well? So
yeah, that's not a bad thing.
It's just all going to inform itself now, and there's 4 episodes left. I said, holding up 3 fingers. I said there's 4. There's going to be 4 more to bring me to the end of the book series at episode 20. I've just finished 16. And I'm going to be doing that over the next 2 years. So, of course, the movie is going to massively energize, I think, these last 4 episodes, because it's an extraordinary wave to be riding on top of at the moment.
Final question. Well, I think what I really love about the books, having read to my son about them, is that they're redemption stories. They are stories about people who might have character flaws or have perceptions about them, but they can change that at any given moment. I think it's a really important value for kids to actually learn. But is that something that you really I know that your inspiration was to make something that was really cool, but the redemptive arc parts of it, especially with these bad guys characters, I think that's something that's really cool and something that I think a lot of kids, especially younger kids stuck on social media especially, could really learn from. And was that something that you really wanted to bring to the fore?
Totally. Absolutely. And the thing is, all the stuff that I've been mashing up, it would be meaningless if there wasn't something underpinning it that actually meant something. So absolutely. And what I was interested in, and it was a real gamble, it doesn't seem like it now, but it was at the time, was to take books for that age group where normally characters are quite simple and they have a little adventure and then they reboot and then they have another adventure, and you can read those books in any old order and it doesn't matter. What I was interested in was taking characters who are dysfunctional and having them go on a journey where they keep falling off the wagon, metaphorically, and messing up, and go on that, and then eventually in some cases end up quite different, in quite a different place by the end of the series than they were at the start, which for that age group is pretty much unheard of. And if anybody had been advising me at the time, the advice would have been, yeah, that's not going to work for that age group. They need it all wrapped up by the end of the episode. They won't have the attention span to wait 6 months for the next part. But it's to my absolute delight and my publisher's delight too, that hasn't been the case. Kids just hang out for the next one, and 6 months later they're going, what's going to happen next? And that's the coolest thing that can happen to somebody in my position who's writing books for kids.
Well, Aaron Blabey, I thank you so very much for your time today. Thank you for the books. Thank you for your interview. Hopefully we can talk again in the future.
Thank you, mate. Take care.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by 80s Tees. 80s Tees is an online retailer of licensed t-shirts and pop culture gear from your favorite movies, TV shows, cartoons, video games, comic books, and musicians. Celebrate your inner 80s nerd and click on the link in the show notes below to get the raddest retro t-shirts delivered to your door. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Loot Crate. Founded in 2012, Loot Crate is the worldwide leader in fan subscription boxes. Loot Crate partners with industry leaders in entertainment, gaming, sports, and pop culture to deliver monthly themed crates, produce interactive experiences in digital content, and film original video productions. No matter what you geek out about, Loot Crate has a subscription box for you. To get your very own exclusive collectibles, apparel, and gear delivered to your door, be sure to click on the link in the show notes below. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is also brought to you by Vudu. Watch the latest movies and TV shows anytime, anywhere. No subscriptions, no contract. Enjoy stunning quality in up to 4K ultra high definition at home, and download and watch on your mobile device as well. To rent and buy from over 100,000 titles or watch thousands of movies free with Vudu Movies on us, be sure to click on the link in the show notes below. Now, back to the show. Hi, my name is Matt Pejkovic from Matt's Movie Reviews. Pierre, how are you today?
Hey, Matt, how are you, man?
Very great. Well. Very well, thank you very much. I just want to say, first off, as a father of 2 diehard The Bad Guys fans, I took them to the movie a couple of days ago. They loved the movie. So you got your target market right there. And I got to say, I know the books intimately because I've read them to my kids.
Yeah.
There's 12 to up to 15. I think and Anthony Bailey was talking about he's going to do 20 of them. So you've inherited not only a book, you've inherited a whole kind of world. I'm curious, coming into this world, what do you tackle first? Do you tackle story or do you tackle the visuals? Because your background as an animator, I imagine maybe the visuals is what kind of strikes you first.
Yes, that's a great question. When I came in, there was already a script. There was a draft. And there were the books, obviously. So we already had an idea of what the character's journey would be, and where those, what would be kind of the big arcs of the story. But what really drew me to the world was to this story and telling the story of these bad guys was really the opportunity to tell a fun, action-driven heist comedy, heist caper with animals, and really play in that world, and so I think I came at it from a more of a visual angle, like a cinematographer type of or artist type of or draftsman type of angle, as opposed to writer angle. I knew we had a great writer. We have an amazing story team that was able to also just make the story evolve and work with Ethan and myself just to make sure that we had a story that slowly just shaped itself to become what it is now. But for me, it was like I came at it more from the visual angle. Yeah, definitely.
The character designs are similar to what Blabey has in his books, but different at the same time.
Yeah.
So the first thing my son says to me is, "Dad, why does Piranha have feet?"
Yeah.
And he wanted me to ask you about this. I'm curious too. When it comes to a decision like that, does that take a long time to kind of get what you want in your world? Because we're dealing with a different medium in film, of course. There's different kind of physical aspects of it. When it comes to a decision like that, is that a long kind of process, or did you know that there were going to be certain changes that need to be achieved in order for the film world to tell this story?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I mean, like, in response to your son's question, which is incredibly clever, the moment that I, saw the books, saw Aaron's drawings, which are incredible, I knew we also needed to expand on that world, just to make sure it was as rich as we could make it on screen. But I'm an animator, and I was like, how the hell am I gonna make a shark with no feet and a piranha with no feet move in this world? So it really came from almost a practical question and also an idea of how am I going to shoot a piranha, on its belly flopping, next to a wolf, and it would not look good. It looks great on the books. It's amazing on the page, but for a movie that moves and you have 24 frames per second when you need to move, there is no way that's going to work. So I knew right away that was not going to work, and I wanted to, just take a slightly different angle. The trick though was to keep Aaron involved throughout all of this to make sure that he was okay with those changes, which he was okay with all those changes. He knew we were not completely betraying the material and being very consistent with what he was doing, but expanding it and making sure that it would adapt on the big screen. So I think that partnership in mind, it helped me shape that world in a way that was suitable for animation and for motion and for simple, to shoot these characters, in an appropriate way. So all those decisions were made based on how would I close my eyes and see that those characters move, and then I would just be, I need to adjust this and I need to adjust that because this is not going to work. And obviously it's a long process,
Yes, of course. There's an interesting scene in the movie where the wolf dances, and it's really interesting because Sam Rockwell does the voice for the wolf.
Yeah.
And Sam Rockwell is known to cut the rug, so to speak, on the dance floor.
Yeah.
And the movements that the wolf was doing, very reminiscent of how Sam Rockwell himself dances.
Of course.
Did you actually take, like how Sam dances and kind of adapted the wolf to kind of portray that way? And do you usually do that in your animations? If you have a voice actor attached, do you take certain movements and like to kind of, interpret that through the characters on screen as well?
Very often, yes, we do that. Every single session where we record our actors, we also film them. So the animators have that available for them just to reference if they need to. So sometimes we don't. Sometimes the animators just take reference of themselves acting out the scene. Sometimes, they would use reference of that actor as he's saying the line. Sometimes they will use that actor on one of their movies before and just take some elements of their movement or the essence of the movement and kind of try and reproduce that to make it more believable or realistic. But in our case for that dance, the dance came because we had Anthony who could sing and Sam who could dance, and we're like, there's no way we're not gonna do or pay homage to these two guys for what they do and what they're really good at, And so yes, definitely. So we work with Susie Meisner, who's Sam's choreographer and long friends, and she actually choreographed the whole scene with Sam in mind, knowing him really well, and Zazie in mind as well, just dancing together. And then the animators took what she did, so we did a previs of that whole sequence, and then when it was time for the animators to animate those characters, they would actually use some Sam actual dancing references and try to instill them on top of the dance move that those dancers would give us as video reference. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Final question. Zoom is a beautiful thing. I'm over this side of the world, you're over there, we're talking about your movie. You practically had to create a whole movie out of Zoom. You're in remote and you had to communicate with your team. What were the keys in really achieving the success that you had with this movie, especially in regards to this type of communication over a computer, considering that you lose kind of like some of that intimacy as well, which I'm sure you as a filmmaker would like to have? What were the keys in kind of like making sure that you could stay on top of everything and make sure everything ran as smoothly as they could in a remote setting?
A lot of things. First of all, an amazing crew of producers who are able to organize the whole production, in a flawless way, making sure they stayed in touch and all the department would stay in touch. And also an amazing crew of artists, at Dreamworks, be able to create that, what you see on screen in the end, and heads of departments that were really great at just leading their teams. One of the big chance that I had was I've been working at Dreamworks for a long time, and so I've known these teams for a long time. So there is a little bit of a shortcuts, between them and myself, and they knew where I was going. The other good thing is we were not in lockdown right away. There was a few months before we got into lockdown, so we got to know each other even better, and they got to really understand where I was going. But once we were in lockdown, they knew what I wanted. They knew me. I knew them really well, and it was rather easy for me to connect with them and just being able to guide them. But honestly, it's like a real team effort and an effort from a team that knows each other really well and are all quite close friends. And I think that's the strength of a studio like Dreamworks, where people tend to stay quite a long time in this place because they love that friendship and that connection between them, and between all of us really. And therefore it allows for massive strengths in a situation like this one, massive like a team spirit in front of adversity,
Well, you and your team did a fantastic job with this movie.
So
on
much.
Behalf of myself and my children, congratulations to you. And hopefully we'll see a sequel because I want to see more.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.